Hi everyone, my name's Andrew Pohl. I'm a Principal Product Manager with Amazon S3, and today we'll be talking about modernizing your data archive. We're going to go over why companies archive data. We'll talk about the benefits of archiving in the cloud. We'll go over your options in AWS for archiving data, and finally, we'll go over customer use cases. So first, I want you to take a look at this slide and look at all of the different industries that are represented here. You've got media and entertainment, gaming, financial services, retail, government, many different industries. And also think about all the companies within these industries and the customers that they serve. There's a lot of different use cases for data in all of these different industries. But one of the things that these industries have in common is that companies within these industries are archiving data on AWS. For example, with media and entertainment, a lot of these companies have video files. They're large in size, and oftentimes they're keeping them around for a really long time, sometimes indefinitely. And they need somewhere to store all of this data. It's got to be scalable to petabytes, it has to be durable, and it also needs to be accessible, because these video files are important assets for these companies, and they need to be able to get them when they need them. And for that data, those videos that are being accessed less than twice per year, they can store them in archival storage in S3 Glacier or S3 Glacier Deep Archive and still have access to those, but really get the right mix of cost and availability for that data. Now, there are also companies in the financial services sector that are archiving data, but for a little bit different use case. They still have data that's being accessed less than twice per year. However, they also need additional compliance features for some of their data. This is sensitive customer data, transactional data, and they can do that within AWS as well with S3 Object Lock, where they have write once, read many storage. Or think of companies in the research industry, where they're building up analytical data. They're building data lakes on AWS. And this data quickly grows to petabytes. And to save on their costs, they can archive this data. They can still access it when they need it. And they can utilize it to build machine learning models. Think use cases like genomics too, where you have lots of data that you want to be able to use eventually, but the access pattern may not be more than twice per year. And we see these companies using AWS to archive their data. So why do customers within these different industries choose AWS? Well, first, it's easier to move data out of archival storage and into distribution where they can actually use it. The value of data is often directly correlated to a company's ability to use it. And customers also love that they don't have to manage on-premises archives to get the cost benefits of archiving their data. Now, as you can imagine, there are many more use cases for archival data than I've just mentioned. But there are really three common use cases that I want to focus on for the rest of the presentation. And those are data retention, compliance, and disaster recovery. So first, for data retention. Many of our customers are collecting a lot of data, which they're using to improve their products and services they offer to customers. Imagine, for example, a technology company. They're using their data to do machine learning, they're doing analytics, but the data's aging. And for that data that they want to keep around and store for future use cases, or that they're only accessing less than twice per year, they use archival storage. And ultimately, with the lower cost of archival storage, they can store more of this data and ultimately then use more of it. These companies also love that AWS keeps innovating and adding to the value of their data over time. Now, companies also have compliance use cases. I mentioned financial services before, and a lot of the financial services companies have data that they have to keep around for a certain amount of time, say 7 years. And it's not really being accessed all that much, less than twice per year, or really even less. And so a lot of our financial services customers then look to archival storage to store this data so that they can save on their costs. But the data is also accessible when they need it. And they can use features like I had mentioned, such as S3 object lock, to give their data write once, read many protection. Finally, for disaster recovery, we see customers using ISVs. They're putting data directly into S3 Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive. They may be using Tape Gateway to store virtual tapes. Or they might be using cross-region replication to replicate from a primary region into a secondary region to ensure that they have that secondary redundant copy. So really, there's a lot of different ways that customers can store their backups within Amazon S3. And customers love the flexibility that they have to choose. So while there are a lot of reasons why customers choose to archive in the cloud, many of our customers have previously stored their archives on premises to manage their use cases. But ultimately, they're still deciding to move their archival data into AWS to modernize their archives. And I want to take you through some of the challenges that they've faced. The first is hosting. Managing data centers is difficult. You've got to have the space, power, cooling, and network for your servers, for your archives, and not to mention, as you scale, then to manage redundancy, durability, you've got to have multiple data centers that you're managing at this point. Now, for archives, you might also be storing them off premises, on tape. And that comes with its own challenges. There's transportation, time to restore, and you have to make sure that you have the infrastructure available to actually retrieve the tapes, get them back onto servers when you actually need to restore whatever data that you've stored offsite. Companies have to manage capital. They have to purchase servers, libraries, or tapes, disks to archive data. And all of this comes at a heavy opportunity cost, not just for administration, but for the IT professionals that are managing this complex structure. They're spending their time lowering costs, providing multiple different solutions for different data types, but at the end of the day, this becomes really expensive because they could be spending their time actually focusing on customers, focusing on the products and the things that really bring value to a company's customers. So ultimately, we see a lot of our customers move their archives to AWS because they saw opportunities to lower their cost and the complexity of their operations. They could free up their IT resources to focus on their customers. And finally, they didn't have to manage multiple hardware solutions to get cost optimization for their storage and their different workloads. And that's because at AWS, we offer many different storage options for all sorts of different solutions. And in fact, on Amazon S3, we have 7 different storage classes to choose from, which gives customers the ability to optimize their costs for a wide range of use cases. Now, our experience at AWS has allowed us to innovate and reduce prices and offer more options. And archival storage has always been a part of this innovation, since the launch of S3 Glacier in 2012 to Glacier Deep Archive in 2019. And now, for customers that have storage that they don't really know what the access pattern is going to be, we've added archival storage options to intelligent tiering, which allows customers to now get the cost optimization of archival storage even when they don't know what their usage pattern is going to be. So it's worth noting again here that 90% of the products and features that we release at AWS are driven by direct ask from our customers. It's really listening to our customers. That's how we've been able to create so many features across Amazon S3 and really AWS as a whole, which make optimizing your storage costs on AWS easier than ever. I'm going to take you through some of the S3 API features as they relate to archival storage. So the first is lifecycle management. And you may have heard of this one before. This is a really important feature for customers that have data that changes access patterns over time. And we'll see this often where an object might be accessed frequently, say once or even more per day for a month. But then after a month, a customer might decide, I want to keep this data around. I may need to use it in the future, but it's really not being accessed more than twice per day, and therefore it doesn't make sense really to keep it in S3 standard. And so they can use lifecycle management then to transition the data. If it's only getting accessed less than twice per day, they can transition it into S3 Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive to save on their storage costs while still getting the accessibility that they need. Now, we saw that customers were using things like AWS Config and the S3 API to build dashboards to help them understand their storage and really see the patterns within their storage to figure out what portion of it should be lifecycled. But today we have S3 Storage Lens, which is an AWS-built solution that can manage that for you. You can use that to look at your storage, look at the trends, and figure out what portion of it should actually be lifecycled ultimately to optimize your costs. Now, some customers, they already know that they have data that's being accessed less than twice per year. And they can directly put data into S3 Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive to save immediately on their storage class or costs for that data. Customers also can replicate data using cross-region replication from a primary region to a secondary region and store that secondary in S3 Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive to save on the costs of that additional copy. And finally, for customers that have compliance workloads that require write-once, read-many storage, we have S3 Object Lock. These features are available in both Amazon S3's archival storage classes, including S3 Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive. And now that I've talked about what's similar about Amazon S3's archival storage classes, I want to share with you how to choose the right one for your archival data. So first, for S3 Glacier, this is for customers who want archival storage pricing, but they need to be able to get their data back within minutes to hours. So for example, Joe mentioned media and entertainment companies, and especially those that have news broadcast workloads. They may need to prepare video for the 6 o'clock news. And typically, a standard retrieval with an S3 Glacier will suffice. They can get their data back between 3 to 5 hours. They can pull it back in the morning or perhaps the night before, and they'll have enough time to edit the video before the 6 o'clock news, and everything works great. However, there are instances where there's breaking news, and there's not nearly that much time to prepare for the 6 o'clock news, and that's where expedited restore comes in. Because now they can get their video files back within minutes, and they can still prep it in time for the 6 o'clock news. Now, in Glacier, we also had customers that didn't really need to get their data back so quickly. And what was really important to them was being able to lower their costs. So for example, customers doing research and machine learning, these workflows might be a little bit longer. They may have days to even weeks to pull analytical data and run machine learning. But what they really want to do is be able to store more data, because it's the data that has value. They can work on that data, build models, and make things better for their customers. But in order to do that, they need a really low cost. And that's why we developed S3 Glacier Deep Archive, which is the archival storage for customers that can retrieve objects in 12 hours to, I think, next calendar day, 48 hours. And that's fine for them, but they really want that low-cost storage. So these two storage classes work really well for customers who know what their access pattern is. But what if you don't know what portion of your data you'll need frequent access on versus what portion is more suitable to archival storage? Well, that's where S3 Intelligent Tiering comes in. If you don't know how often you're going to need to access your storage, you can use S3 Intelligent Tiering to cost optimize your storage. It's a popular option for customers that have data lakes on S3 because it's often difficult to predict what portion of the heterogeneous data set you'll need to access for your different needs. So I want to dive a little bit deeper, though, into what S3 Intelligent Tiering is. It's the only cloud storage that offers automatic cost savings by transitioning your data between 4 different access tiers. It monitors your your storage at the object level, moving data to access tiers at the object level so that you don't actually have to know what the access is of your different objects to save money. In addition, there's no operational overhead, such as lifecycle charges or retrieval charges, as your data is moving between the access tiers, which is also really important for our customers using data lakes, because they may have a use case where they need to pull back a large amount of their data, say even 10 or 20%. And before that, the data was cold. They weren't really using it. But if they identify a new business use case for the data and say they want to train a new model, they can pull their data back without having to worry about any additional retrieval charges. The data will be then put back into S3 Standard, and then they can use the data to train their models. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail too on how S3 intelligent tiering works in action. So for archival data, it will transition first from the frequent access tier after 30 days. So your data, when you put it into S3 intelligent tiering, it will sit on the frequent access tier for 30 days, and objects that haven't been accessed after that amount of time will move to the infrequent access tier. After another 60 days, if you've enabled the archive access tier, your data will transition to archive access, and finally deep archive access if it hasn't been accessed for another 90 days and you've enabled the deep archive access tier. So in a total of 180 days, if your objects have not been accessed, they will move to the deep archive access tier, and you can save up to 95% on your storage costs for those objects. Now, for archival data, selecting the right storage class is a really important step in optimizing your cost. But storing data in Amazon S3 isn't just about cost, but about security and compliance and the options that we provide our customers to handle those workloads. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, AWS has many customers that want to archive data, but they also have specific compliance requirements. They choose S3 Glacier and S3 Glacier Deep Archive because these storage classes provide the right mix of compliance features and availability that they need for their data. So for these workloads, we have S3 Object Lock, which offers write-once, read-many storage protection for S3 objects. Now, S3 Object Lock can actually be configured in two different settings. You can set up retention management controls in either governance or compliance mode. Now, governance mode is for customers that want to have write-once, read-many protection on a subset of objects. They want that storage to be immutable. So no one can change the retention period. They can't change the encryption on the storage. They can't do anything to it. They can't delete it. However, the retention policy could still be changed by certain specified accounts, such as the root account. And this is really for customers who want this protection, but they also want to reserve the right to change it in the future in case they decide, maybe they don't want to keep the data around as long. They might want to save on their costs. And so that leaves it open for them to change. Now, taking it a step further in compliance mode, customers can use S3 Object Lock to make their objects totally immutable for the retention period. And that retention period can't even be changed by the root account. And so once that data is written for the retention period, it will be there. So now that you know about our archival storage classes and some of the features available, I want to dive into how one of our customers is leveraging archival storage in AWS. And that customer is Capital One. Capital One is a digital banking leader that helps their users. They want to help their customers by providing ingenuity, simplicity, and humanity in banking. Now, Capital One is a leader in technology, and in fact, their founders believed that technology was going to change the banking industry. And along that vein, in 2014, they started a pilot in the cloud. And by 2020, they had moved all of their data centers into the cloud, and they had closed their last data center. Capital One was using AWS to do machine learning. For example, with their data lake, they were able to improve the customer experience on their app. And they continue to use machine learning to make a lot of other experiences better. But as you can imagine, they're also building up a lot of data. They've got lots of different types of data. They've got analytical data, they've got application data, and it's all over. They've got it for their different applications, internal teams, for external use cases, for their app. And this was a very complicated structure. And in 2016 and 2017, they really realized that they wanted to both improve the governance on their data, but they also wanted to increase their resource usage efficiency. And so one of the first things that they did was they enabled versioning on over 90% of their buckets. And this was really important because now they could have older versions of their objects if anything happened to the primary version, such as corruption or perhaps the primary version accidentally got deleted, they would be able to go back to a previous version. However, as you can imagine, with the amount of data that they were storing, their data was building up, and they also needed to manage the cost structure of their data. And so the next thing that they did was they used lifecycle management to apply lifecycle delete policies to their objects at the prefix level. So they combed through their data, looked at their different prefixes, and figured out how long they needed to keep each set. And with lifecycle delete, then they were able to clean up non-current versions and ensure that their storage costs weren't ballooning. Now, they didn't stop there. They also realized that they could use standard and frequent access as well, because a lot of this data wasn't being accessed frequently. And so what they did there was they looked again at their prefixes and they enabled lifecycle policies to move data to standard and frequent access. And of course, this was different across their different data sets, which then they were able to manage at the prefix level. Now, to do this, they had to use AWS config and the S3 API to build dashboards to really understand their storage. But today we offer S3 Storage Lens, which makes it much simpler to look on AWS at your storage, look at your trends, and figure out what portion of your data can be lifecycled. Now, in 2020, things changed again. Because Capital One's audit requirements changed, they were now able to use S3 Glacier and S3 Glacier Deep Archive to archive their storage. And that was really exciting for them. They went back and they looked at over 500 buckets. They re-looked at their lifecycle policies. And for that data that was being accessed less than twice per year and could withstand access of minutes to hours, they configured lifecycle policies to move data into Glacier. And at the end of the day, then, they were able to save quite a lot more money on their storage costs, and they were optimized across all of the S3 storage classes, and ultimately then had achieved their goal of maximizing their resource usage efficiency. So, in conclusion, today we've talked about why customers archive data. We've reviewed the benefits of archiving data in the cloud, as well as the features and options available to you as you're archiving data. And I want to leave you with these closing thoughts. The first is that Amazon S3 helps to maximize the value of your archives. There are two parts to value, including cost and maximizing the benefit. And with Amazon S3, we make it easy to optimize your storage costs on the cost side, but also you get access to your data when you need it, so that you can actually use it for new business use cases, to train models, or for whatever your use case is. AWS is developing features such as enhanced machine learning capabilities that will help you unlock value from this data in the future, which is really important to many of our customers. And we also know that governance and compliance is important to our customers, which is why we offer S3 Object Lock that gives their data extra protection, especially when it's that sensitive data that they're archiving. So in conclusion, with all of the features and innovation that's happening at AWS, there's no better place in the world to archive data than S3 Glacier and S3 Glacier Deep Archive. Thanks so much for joining us today.